Hey, and welcome back to our live coverage of the Mackinac Policy Conference. We are in the last 6 minutes of our 3-day coverage here at on Mackinac Island in the Grand Hotel. And there's no one I'd rather wrap up the conference with than Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. And it's quiet at the Grand Hotel. It's finally, all of a sudden, it starts so quiet, and then it's crazy for 3 days, and now everyone is going home. It's like summer camp. It's like the end of summer camp.
It's a little wilder than the summer camps I went to, but
I know, I was just going to say, I've never been to a summer camp like this one, but so let's do a little takeaway here. Nolan, I'm going to start with you. Kind of on the Friday here saying, where have we been and where are we going to take everything?
Got a lot of progress, I thought, in the last 3 days in working through some of Detroit's issues and bringing some people together to begin that process of closing the gap on things like the Grand Bargain and the Water Authority deal. Didn't get anything stamped and sealed, but trapped a lot of people on this island together and forced them to talk to each other about it.
I always love it when you get trapped on the island because, again, you know that the conversations are happening and some pretty interesting ones, too, when you pass by people even here in the parlor. So, Stephen, what's your takeaway from this?
Well, I mean, I think, again, the idea that this Grand Bargain has got to come together. Kevin Orr's speech this morning, I thought, was a real reality check for what's at stake, what people are doing to try to prevent this from happening or working for us, and how critical it is for that the pensioners in particular vote for this plan and support it, and give us this new lease on our financial lives.
So Kevin Orr, he did speak this morning, and then you had a panel, actually, Stephen, right afterward, talking about Detroit's next chapter. And I thought it was interesting because there's always that age-old question. It was you had a member of City Council there, you had a member of the House there, you had a member of philanthropy, foundations. How interesting how it's like, how do we all work together, and how do we make it not just let's collaborate in loose quotes, but the action never happens?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they were all able to point to very specific things that they were either doing on their own or together that are a piece of what's happening here. You talk about just the fact that Speaker Bolger has been spending time in Detroit, in the neighborhoods with Harvey Santana or Mike Duggan or Brenda Jones is a phenomenal development. And just the way he's able to talk about the needs of people in Detroit, because he's hearing from Detroiters when he's doing that, he's seeing the neighborhoods. That's unprecedented, Democrat or Republican, in terms of the Speaker of the House taking that kind of interest and showing that kind of leadership. So I think he deserves an enormous amount of credit for that, and that's somebody I don't often agree with at all.
But
a little perspective.
I've heard so many good things about him up here in terms of his development as a speaker and his ability to manage his caucus and bring votes together. I think he's really growing in the job, and when you're in term limits, you're constantly retraining a new speaker. I think he's starting to get it.
I think it was interesting also, we heard this morning from Mayor Mitch Landrieu from New Orleans. And I think, Nolan, you always make the comparison, or both of you make the comparison of New Orleans with Detroit post-Katrina and, post the perfect storm that has been created here for us. Did you get anything out of his speech and things that we can take away and work on here in the city?
Well, the difference between New Orleans and Detroit, and I think that point has to be made, is given the amount of federal dollars that went into Detroit in those years after Katrina, those guilt dollars from the Bush administration because they screwed up the beginning of the response to the storm, that place ought to look like the Paris of the South. If Detroit had those sort of resources blow in here after our man-made disaster, if you will, imagine what the city could do with it.
But are we getting enough support from the Obama administration right now in terms of pointing us in the right direction where funding can be found for the city?
I think we've gotten an enormous amount of support from the Obama administration in the last, I'd say, 8 to 10 months after they sort of woke up and realized that this was a big enough crisis they needed to be involved. They've been here, not just trying to identify resources.
Donald Graves was up here.
Don Graves has been here.
I spoke with Don Graves. So we have that interview online if you want to go back to myvote.org.
The work that they're doing, some of it is work that you wouldn't necessarily expect agents of the federal government to have to do in a city, but they've been filling the gaps really in the sort of capacity of people here to get stuff done. So.
Well, there is a lot more to talk about in wrapping up this entire conference. I think we got a lot of great things out of it. And again, talking about education and tying it to the economics of the state and looking at the business climate as well. Also, a couple little political things. We'll talk a little bit more about the water department. And we're going to have an entire wrap up tonight on Detroit Public Television at 7:30. So for all of us, we want to say a big thank you to the folks here at the Grand Hotel and also the Detroit Regional Chamber for having us. We've been here for the last 4 days, setting up and making sure that we could bring this conference to you, because 1,700 people were here, but there's a whole lot more people in the state that want to see what's going on here, want to be part of the conversation, and want to express their opinion and really weigh in on what the future of Michigan should be. For all of us at Detroit Public Television and the great crew that we have here from DPTV, thanks so much to you guys for everything for the past 4 days. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next year on Mackinac Island.